I came up with the idea called imaginary work in a fake industry. There's just a lot of I don't know, there's just a lot of
Bullshit.
bullshit and gimmicks and, like, is this going to compromise like my moral standpoint and my integrity as an artist? And am I going to compromise on the music? I'm all about just being aware of what is real and what is a complete gimmick.
One more thing.
One more thing. One more thing.
Hello, and welcome to a very special episode of One More Thing, the first episode of 2023. I'm speaking to Revan, who has just dropped an album. I think it's the first release on Flexout Audio of 2023. And it's your debut solo album as well, isn't it, man?
Yeah, it is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I guess it's kind of an album, but kind of not. It feels like an album, but it's like a quite a small album. So
Yeah.
I've coined it as like a mini album.
It's
But it's
such a
good. It's
weird
good to have
one,
it out.
really. It's a personal thing anyway with albums, but then Spotify's kind of ruined that too because they'll call like a single an album and things like that. So
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
idea of what an album is, but I think in the spirit of where you've come from with the album, which is what we're going to discuss now, less
Mm.
is definitely more, and you've approached it like an album, like creatively and artistically.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks. It's nice that sort of you can see that. It was never meant to be like a larger project. To be honest, we were just sort of throwing ideas, me and Bassi from Flexout, about doing an EP. And the first EP I did for Flexout was it was essentially just four bangers. It wasn't There was nothing else to it. It was just four bangers, and we were like, "Oh, this is great." Um, and then with this one, I think we were both trying for ages, trying to like almost recreate that, but in a bad way. I think me and Tom were both like, "Oh, it's got to be up there with the first EP." And then actually, I think after a while, the more music I was sending him, we kind of both accepted that this was taking like a completely different turn, but not for the worst. It was like a bit more expressive, had a bit more, I think, meaning to it than just,
Yeah.
four club bangers.
Definitely. And loads more scope as well. You're playing with tempos, you're playing with genres, you're exploring
Yeah.
the grey areas as well. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the title is called Imaginary Work. So, and I mean, this is a really, really loaded title, and I've been really looking forward to having this
Yeah. Yeah.
discussion with you. I mean, it's addressed in that opening track with that sample. But
Mhm.
tell me everything. Where are you coming from on that?
So that was actually the last tune that I wrote for the album. So the I had an idea for the album name. Me and Tom were toying between things. I wanted it to be a little bit controversial in a way. So the track, I said to Tom, to Bassi, I want to make like a real statement piece for this project. I knew I wanted another song on it, but I was like, I need something that's like completely out there, that realistically no one's going to play it in clubs. It's just purely as like a statement piece. And I came up with the idea called imaginary work in a fake industry.
I love it.
Tom hated it. He was like, he didn't hate it. He was just like, oh man, he was like, I love the title, but he was like, you just bummed me out so hard. He was like, obviously as a label owner and and all that stuff, he was like, I love it and I know exactly what you're talking about, but he was like, I'm not sure if we can have it that controversial. So we both sat down and I was like, no, you're right, actually. I want it to be a bit more inconspicuous, a bit more, like you said, it is a loaded title. So one person will take it in as one meaning and someone else will come up with something completely different. So I'm a bit of a cynical person, I guess, in a way. Not like a miserable person, but just a little bit. I look at a lot of things going on within just the music industry as a whole, not just drum and bass, but the whole industry. And there's just a lot of I don't know, there's just a lot of
Bullshit.
bullshit and gimmicks and like we see it from a day-to-day basis. Everyone knows it's going on. Maybe not say all the listeners and stuff, because without some people believing in it, you wouldn't be able to get away with the gimmicky bullshit side of things. No one would do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like I've been doing music for sort of 10 years now. and I love it. I love the industry, but obviously you get introduced to certain parts of the industry through doing it for 10 years that you go like, is this going to compromise like my moral standpoint and my integrity as an artist, and am I going to compromise on the music bottom line if I go along with some of this bullshit in order to get, the more followers and more listeners and the hype and the gimmicks and stuff. So I feel like with this project especially, um I said to Tom, I was like, that's why I've done it as a multi-genre thing, because I was like, I'm not fussed about people really being like, oh, I wanted more drum and bass, or oh, I wanted more of this. So I was like, I wanted it to just be a body of work that I was proud of, essentially.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a body of work that I'm like, oh, how many streams can I get? How many plays can I get? How many gigs can I get off of this? It was just like, I wanted to just be like, right, here's a taste of what I can do as well as the drum and bass. And with the end goal being, I mean, I'm looking way down the line, but the end goal of this mini LP was to introduce people into what my full LP will be in a couple of years. So I just want it to be complete carnage, chaos. No, just kind of like tease people into like, this is okay. You can enjoy stuff that isn't drum and bass. You'll, you know.
Yeah. I
So
think I think you sum it up perfectly with that sample that's on the opening track there, really, where so many of these tactics that are employed by labels or social media experts or
yeah.
marketers and all of these additional roles in the industry, which are questionable in what they are.
Yeah.
Including myself as a content creator, as editorial. I'm part of the old-fashioned way of promoting music, but it's still an imaginary job. It's not making music and it's
Yeah.
not releasing music, so it is one of these kind of additional things. But there are so much of the tactics used within these methods which are employed these days are based on fear. And you
Yeah.
already kind of got caught that with, will I get gigs from this? Can I get streams from this?
Yeah.
These are the tactics that are employed to create all of this unnecessary bullshit and all of these layers of overthinking that a creator like yourself will go through
So
putting out into the world.
normalized. It's so normalized. Like artists will sign deals with their favorite label because they're like, oh my god. And I'm not naming any names, but I can't count on the amount of fingers I know of friends of mine that have signed 2 album deals and then hated music for like 5-6 years, or even like 3 EP deals with their favorite label and that have promised them the world before they signed, and then they sign the music and all of a sudden it's like they've literally signed their soul to the devil. As soon as they've put that signature on the paper, it's like, oh, you see all this shit that we said before, like, bye. That's not in the contract. um and it's, yeah, I think there is a lot of bullshit that goes along with it. And uh it is sad because I feel like there's, from that side of the industry, especially in drum and bass, the bigger label side of the industry, exclusive contract side of things, not all the time. Like, don't get me wrong, I also have friends that love the deals that they're in and are in exclusive deals, and it works for them. But I think there are tactics. I feel like, anyway, this might be a big conspiracy thing on my end, but there are tactics to almost take advantage of up and coming artists by promising them the world on these bigger labels. And actually, as soon as they've signed anything, they haven't got a music lawyer to check over anything. They haven't got anyone who has any legal experience or experience in these deals to check over anything. They've just gone, if I don't sign it now, the opportunity is going to go. And actually, like, you you could effectively spend years of your life regretting that deal. So I think it's not a sense that it's not like a thing that's on the label side of things. I think it's more of just giving people more knowledge for these sort of deals is so important, and allowing like things like Musicians Union and like PRS are like amazing tools to stop people getting into these trapped contracts and stuff. And I think, like you said, with the gimmick side of thing, with promoting music, like we all have to do it, right? Like, I'm not gonna say, like, I'm not sat there going, I promote music in the most integral way in the world. Like I just I'm a weird guy, and I'm like, well, how am I going to promote my music? I'll just promote it in a weird way, and I'll just be weird. And
Yeah.
that's what me and Jay have done for Ill Truth for years. Like we've never, none of it's a gimmick. It's just we're weird guys. But I feel like there is a lot of that not authentic side of the scene that where the gimmicky stuff is everything, and actually the music then takes a backseat.
It's just so many. I mean, the sample. Who is it on the sample on the title
It's the
track?
Black Keys.
The Black
So
Keys.
it's
Right.
like,
Brilliant.
yeah, I that sample was like a 1 in a million potluck find that I started writing the tune, and then I was just googling interviews with so and so about. I think I the Google search I did was interview about how corrupt the music industry is, and it was one of the first. It was like on a thread, and then I sample a lot of interviews anyway, and I hadn't come across this one, and I was like, just listening to it, like, what? Like, this is exactly what I'm trying to portray with this whole meaning of imaginary work. I
Yeah.
think I
Yeah.
messaged Bassie on WhatsApp straight away. I was like, I found the most amazing sample. Like, you'll never believe it. um, but yeah, exactly what you said. I think
No, and he
it's a
says
fine
like
line
he,
with,
the original artist who we were all listening to
mm,
growing up and years before as well. I think there's a really famous, because I wondered if it was Frank Zappa, because Frank Zappa has said a similar thing,
yeah,
in that the best time for music was when the music industry didn't know all of these tricks. And
yeah,
you had these crazy people making far out music in the 60s, but you had
yeah,
kind of stuffy old white dudes
yeah,
just kind of like who didn't really know what to do with it, but thought, okay, the kids will like it, so we'll release it. And that was
yeah,
when you had the purest kind of, ever since then, things have got progressively more cynical. And I wondered if it was that interview, but the sample captures it. That like musicians are weird. Musicians
yeah,
don't work in marketing. Musicians, you said yourself, like you and Jay are weird.
yeah.
Happily weird. If you're
We're
going to spend that
so
long
weird.
in a studio and be right up inside your head,
Mm,
kind of have to be weird to do this job and to live this
yeah,
lifestyle, really, don't you?
100%. I think, and like, don't get me wrong, the album is called Imaginary Work, but it's not as such like a negative take on the music industry as such. Like, I I love music, and without an industry that is there, I wouldn't be sort of able to release my music and do that stuff. It's not necessarily a fully negative take. It's more, for me, it's less about saying the music industry is shit. It's more about trying to highlight to people that don't quite understand the infrastructure of it and the ins and outs and all of that stuff, that actually there is a dark side to it. And being able, for me, I'm all about just being aware of what is real and what is a complete gimmick.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of fear of, like, I have to be this gimmick in order to be successful in music, but actually they're two completely different things. They're
Yeah.
so separated and so isolated. And
Mm.
you see it with artists that don't have any music, or they don't release any music, and their whole branding is this gimmick thing. And that's fine. That's their niche. But you see it's completely separate. They don't have to be linked.
Yeah.
That's
No,
your
no,
choice
they
as
don't.
an artist, whether you want to link it or not.
Yeah. Was there a point then where you became illusioned to this or disillusioned? Like, when you start in the music industry, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, eager for
Yeah.
any opportunities and
Yeah.
inspiration. And that's the moment where where a lot of people might fall for certain tactics employed by people who are in this just to make money
Mm.
off other people's creativity. But was there ever a point, or were you quite pragmatic about things even when you came into the game 10 years ago?
No, no, definitely not. I mean, like, no, there wasn't a point. There wasn't like a one situation. It's not like me and Jay as Ill Truth had like a really bad record deal or anything. I think we were just fortunate that we had people around us that had either been in these really bad situations via the music industry, whether they've signed really horrible music deals without realizing, or they've been told, by certain entities, you have to make this sort of music, or like you're not going to get anywhere. I think we've just been lucky that we've almost like learned by other people's mistakes, and then because of that knowledge early on, when these things have approached us every now and then, where we have been approached by certain people, or do you want to release here, or do you want to do this, like we've been able to kind of spot that something's not right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there was a point or anything. It's more just, I think, I don't know. I work fucking hard. Like I work hard, and I like deep down part of me is like, I don't want to ever be in that position where I'm in a, position of success or whatever before earning it.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like that's the whole thing with the imposter syndrome thing. I think some people, like everyone suffers to an extent with imposter syndrome. I know a lot of people that do. But like me and my friend were kind of chatting about it before, and we were like, because of certain gimmicks now in the music industry, like I said earlier, you have people that make a whole career off of a gimmick, but then the music is actually in the background. And some people will openly say, "Oh, I've got imposter syndrome." And like me being a cynical guy, I go, "Well, have you got an imposter syndrome, or are you just an imposter?" Like, I'm like, have you earned that position, or deep down, do you know that you need to be working a little bit harder? And that doesn't go for everyone. Like I know people that I've suffered with it myself deep down, and whenever it comes around to that, I'm like, actually, like I do put in the hours and I work hard. And
Yeah.
and like that's all it comes down to. Like, how do you put in the work? And you know,
I
like, are
think
you a good
so.
person? Bottom line.
I would like imposter syndrome comes up in so many different interviews, and I've been really open. I still get it now. I get it weekly. Every
Yeah,
time I step onto a Zoom call like this with a member of Noisia and do a radio
yeah,
show, it's just
yeah.
like, what the hell? Even now, like
I
over
can
two
only
years deep,
imagine.
I'm still pinching myself, thinking like, what the hell am I doing? Especially if I'm taking the piss out of them.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
that's more because of the company, and I think like
yeah,
it's associations then as well. And then you want to make sure you want to make sure that you're doing yourself right, that you're doing your peers right when you're associated
yeah.
with
hundred
certain
percent.
people. With you guys, with Ill Truth, I associate you with like as well as Flexout as well, but with DLR. And
Yeah,
when you're rolling with someone of that caliber, then you're expected to
exactly
be at
right,
that
man.
level as well, really. And that, I mean, kind of as a
We
side.
definitely, in that same sense of you and Noisy, 100%. Like, but it's exactly the same. Like when we, like with that side of things, I remember DLR like, "Oh, do you want to come over and work on the tune?" And me and Jay are like, "What? Like,
Yeah.
what's happening?" Like, so I remember like prepping. I was working full time at the time, and I was like on every lunch break, like prepping sounds, prepping samples, like prepping bass patches and sampling loads of stuff. I was like, I've got to come to this with like everything possibly that I can come
Yeah.
bring to the table. But yeah, the imposter syndrome thing, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying like anyone that has it is like, oh, it's because you're not deserving to be in that position. It's more just it's an interesting question of like, via the conversation of like gimmicks in the music industry and
Yeah.
people not being as authentic, or believing in their music or letting their art form carry what they do. I can understand why a lot of people that are in that position might have imposter syndrome, because
Yeah, definitely,
like,
definitely. And I think it's no coincidence that imposter syndrome and these type of techniques, what we're talking about in the darker side of the industry, are both very prominent energies or topics, matters of discussion and
yeah,
issues within the industry. It's no coincidence that they're both on the rise at the same time, really, isn't it?
yeah, I think it's a hard thing as well for young people getting in the industry now, because, and it's like through no fault of their own, but they're coming into the industry where, like, I was on the cusp where when me and Jay were getting into this, social media within music wasn't a thing. We were still giving out mixtapes at raves and CDs, and being like, can we come play at your event? Like, physically, here's a CD. Like,
Yeah.
we were on that last sort of point where that was a thing. And then after that, it's jumped to SoundCloud, and then now it's all social media. So I feel bad for the new generation that come in that look at this as like, right, here's the formula. I've got to be this all singing, all dancing, encompassing social media managing, like content creating influencer that also does music. It's like, how you don't have the time. How on earth you can't have the time to do all of it. So like, I feel like it's tough because, and I know a lot of friends that really suffer with mental health issues because of that.
Yeah.
That are getting into this early doors and they're just getting disheartened by that because they want to focus all their time on music.
Yeah.
And then all of their friends that aren't making anywhere as much near as much music or aren't DJing as much or practicing as much as they are getting way more opportunities. And they're viewing that as like, well, that's a negative because I'm putting in all this work and I'm not getting anywhere. I think it's like really, it's the whole social media thing plays a massive part on it. And I think
Yeah.
it's tough. So the
It's
whole
the comparison thing, isn't it, really? And it's
yeah
really hard not to compare yourself. And it can put you on a downer. Like you could be in the best of moods and then you see a peer who's done something
yeah
and they're bragging about it in a particular way on social media. I get it too as a writer, and you get that little evil thought in your head. It's not an evil, it's a toxic thought. It's a toxic thought
yeah
where you're like, well, hold on a minute. And then that's it. And you can't shake that. And in
yeah
real, if you took social media out of life, then we would just be, like you're not supposed to know people you went to primary school with, maybe one or two people,
no.
or people you went to high school with. But now, because of this, or someone who you met and had a beer with at a party, suddenly
Yeah
you're connected with them, or they are in your peripheries for the rest of your life. And
yeah
that never happened before with, not to sound like a boomer, but that never happened before with socializing. Sometimes
no
you'd meet someone and think, oh, I wish I still kept in touch with them. Now it's like,
yeah
oh, why the fuck did I keep in touch? Why the fuck did
yeah
I accept that friend
yeah
request or anything?
yeah it's tough. And like I mean it's you're saying about the comparison thing. Me and Mitch Blue Jay talk about this a lot. um like the whole blinkers analogy for me is always the one. Like they put blinkers on horses when they're racing so they can't see the horse to the either side of them. But it's
I
like
like
that is
that. I like
so
that.
hard to do in real life. But I've I went through a stage for years where all I was doing was comparing myself. Why are these people getting these gigs? Why are these people? How are these people releasing on this label? Oh, how are they getting this opportunity? Oh, how are they doing a mix for Radio One? How are they doing this? And it's exhausting. After a while, it's you just gotta like. I was fortunate enough that something clicked in my brain a few years ago that got me out of that. That was kind of just like, who gives a fuck? Like, just get on with your own shit, Hayden. Stop being a dick.
Yeah.
Like, but it's so hard to do. Like you said, it's. I genuinely have that attitude these days, which is like, as long as I'm proud and confident in what I'm doing within music, and I've got a good friendship circle. The people that I care about in music are playing my stuff or messaging and saying, "Oh, I love that song." Like, that's it. That's all I really care about these days. Like
Yeah.
that my peers are liking my music and I've got a good support group
Yeah.
and I enjoy the process. Like that's but it's taken,
Enjoy the
I'm 10
process.
years, it's 10 years in and I'm only at that stage now. So like it's
That's
hard,
brilliant.
but it's so hard that this is what I'm saying. I think it must be so hard being young and getting into this now, because if it's taken me 10 years to be at that position, and don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect. Like there's definitely weeks and there's always going to be times where you know you fall back into that trap because it's natural. But it must be so hard for like younger people that their lives are social media. They've been born with Facebook existing. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
stuff like that. Instagram existed when they were born, and like now getting into music is like, yeah, they don't know another way.
Yeah. One benefit I think of coming through now, though, is that we've been through this. We've been through a lockdown. We've been through,
Yeah,
I think,
true.
the peak levels of social media toxicity. are behind us, I believe,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
now we're able to have conversations like this. There are good. This will be a video on YouTube which will exist forever. You can even
Yeah.
sample it yourself if you like sampling interviews,
Yeah, yeah,
but for
yeah.
people to watch, and we're sharing loads more information. The one thing that wasn't existing when your generation came through, I'm probably about 10, 15 years older than you,
Yeah.
and it definitely didn't exist when I was coming through, was that everybody kept their knowledge to themselves. Everybody in the 90s and the
100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
2000s, and then
Yeah.
as we kind of move in towards like the kind of 2010s, and social
Yeah.
media became a thing, then suddenly knowledge was something to share and an asset and something
Yeah.
that people would be happy to share. And I think the information, that's one benefit of being young and coming through now, is there are people like yourself now willing to say all of this stuff. There's people like me
Yeah.
putting out information. There's millions of artists who think, hang on a minute, I don't want to see other people caught up in traps that I've been caught up in, and are sharing that information.
It's so
And I think as
important.
that culture continues, and as we encourage that culture, we could end up in a really positive place.
Agreed. Yeah. I think me and can't remember, it was just before Christmas, me and James Amos were talking about the same thing. And we were saying like it's crazy how, but more in the sense of giving away knowledge, like production knowledge, and how the whole industry's changed within creative knowledge. People aren't like, well, that's my trick, I'm going to keep that to myself forever. It's a much more open dialogue, sharing, teaching, and helping. And you can hear that in the music.
Yeah.
Everyone's, you've got kids. I'm getting sent tunes to master that by kids that have been doing it for like 6 months. And I'm like, how on earth are you this good after 6 months?
Wow.
And that's because there's Patreon, you've got YouTube, all these resources that private tutoring is like a big thing. Like I said, especially off the back of COVID and everything like that, people are sharing more and everyone's learning more. And I think it definitely, like you said, it's not all dark with the social media thing. There
Yeah.
are amazing positives to come out of it.
Yeah, definitely. And then the diversification of roles that you can play within it as well. I mean, you've also run a sideline as a mastering engineer, or that's your kind of, that's your profession as well. I would imagine without that profession, you probably wouldn't
Mhm.
be able to make that. That funds the drum and bass that you make as well, really, and funds the art that
Yeah,
you're able to express yourself with.
yeah, 100%. So um I was working full time. I think I left university like 5 6 years ago now, 5 years ago maybe. And I was just, doing full time working jobs that you don't really want to do, like everyone kind of does
Yeah.
when they leave uni. Um, and then just started the mastering thing as a random kind of side hustle, really. It was something that fascinated me, and I always enjoyed it. So I just sort of set up as being self-employed, went for it, was doing that alongside my full-time job for about a year and a half.
Wow.
Um, but during the last sort of 7 8 months of that, I was working probably close to like 60 hours a week, if not more. So I'd do my
Wow.
full-time job like 8:30 to 4:30. I'd cycle home. I'd do like meal prep on a Sunday so I didn't have to cook. I just come
Ah,
in, like heat
yes, you
up
got
my
all your meals
food.
ready.
Yeah, literally heat up my food, like wrap it in, put it in my rucksack, cycle to my studio, get there, eat my food, turn the computer on, master until about 11 p.m. midnight, cycle home, do that, rinse, repeat
Wow.
for like, yeah, it was a lot, but it put me in a position, especially during COVID, which, I mean, I got put on furlough for a couple of months. I was fortunate I didn't lose my job. Um, but those couple of months really gave me a chance to like trial it full time. And everyone was making music in COVID. Everyone
Yeah.
was being creative because they were like, what else is there to do? So um, just sort of snowballed after that. And then just fortunate enough that I've had and I have got a really, really good support network around me, amazing friends, really supportive girlfriend, and essentially it was kind of like a stop being a fucking idiot, quit your job, you hate this. The blunt
Brilliant.
kind of, brutal thing. And just sort of took the dive, really. But because of doing that, it's like you said, it's taken the pressure off of creating music for me. So I'm not thinking about, I mean, yeah, maybe it's a bit kind of, it's easier for me to talk about this whole like no gimmicks thing in the industry because I'm in that fortunate position where I'm in my studio every day.
Yeah.
Like I'm in a fortunate position. So, you know, I can kind of take what I say with a pinch of salt. I'm not perfect and all of that, but not having the gigs and making music determine my income has meant that all the pressure from making music has just gone. And it's like,
Yeah. And
do
then
I
the music
like
that you
what?
are making, there's no thinking like, shit, this needs to be a banger. This needs to
Yeah,
pay the bills. This needs to
exactly.
get me the gigs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's
Everything that you put out into the world is honest and real and what you want
yeah,
to see in the world.
exactly. It's not like exactly what you said. And I've had those thoughts before, and I've tried to make music like that before. You go, oh my god, we need more gigs. Oh, I need to make a banger so that we can like have everyone playing this tune and then get more gigs and then you know superstar DJ life and touring, you know, Andy C and all of that. And I'm like, that's not going to work. Like you can't force this. Um,
And you
and
find that most artists, after a couple of years, really would rather step off that merry-go-round
that
anyway, really.
me and Bassi were talking about it recently. We went to his place for the Flexout Christmas sort of podcast and meal that we did. I was like, I love DJing. I was a DJ before I was a producer. Like DJing is my, you know, my sort of the root of where I come from within music. I love it. I couldn't think of anything worse than being a full-time touring DJ. Just because I'm a bit of an old man. I'm not even old, but I just feel I'm like, oh, I need a good night's sleep every now and then. Like, I don't want to eat, you know, just service station food all the time, and I kind of like to have a quiet Saturday night in every now and then. And so for me, the gigs is like it's a treat
Yeah.
rather than you know like necessity. I'm
It
not.
makes it special then, I think. And everyone I know who has a job like yours, sometimes it's in a different creative discipline,
Yeah,
sometimes it's in a completely different world.
yeah,
Like t-shirt printing or something like that, for
yeah, yeah,
example.
yeah,
But everyone I know who has another role is really happy because it takes the pressure off. Even Zero T edits videos during the
yeah.
day, during the working day.
Kean's
That
Kean
blew my mind when he told me that because
Kean
he's
is.
like
I
right
have
there.
no idea how he makes so much fucking music. Like he's got a full-fledged family. You know, he's like touring. He's making shitloads of music. Um,
And has a
editing
full-time job.
videos, full-time job. Whenever I chat to him, I'm just like, mate, you just don't look old. Or I'll see him 2 years later, and he looks younger than he did 2 years ago. And I'm like, how on earth do you look like you know you just doss about all day and chill and all of this, and actually you're like working probably more than I ever have in my life. Yeah. So, but it's the same thing, like you said, it's having something to take pressure off of needing gigs or like you know relying on something that isn't a reliable source of income is for your own mental health and your creative output. I think is so essential.
Definitely.
I'm mentally, I mean, you know, everyone has their off days and you know, there's been times through the mastering work where I've been a burnt out and mentally stressed, but generally I'm in the best place I've been in God knows how many years because I'm enjoying the music and I'm enjoying the gigs and there's no pressure on it.
That's amazing. That's so good to hear. I was wondering if your work, within mastering has also been an influence in terms of other genres and things like that. This is the first time where we've really heard you go in garage mode and breakbeat mode and
Yeah, yeah.
dubstep mode and all of these things. Are there any influences from the clients that you have then, who you're mastering and stuff like that? Because you're exposed to so much more. You're not
Yeah,
in drum and bass the rabbit hole or
yeah,
echo chamber. That's the word I'm looking for.
for sure. I mean, I do get sent some great music that is so left field that I'm like, oh my God. Like, I mastered some tracks yesterday from a Kenyan artist. He sent me some amazing music to master, and I was literally just dancing around this room for like 20 minutes in here,
Brilliant.
this is fucking sick.
Yeah.
But from where originally I came from, like the screechy, noisy dubstep era of music. So that was my introduction to dance music, was the early Chase and Status, well, not early, but the More Than a Lot Chase and Status sort of sound, and like Flux Pavilion and all of the, like, UKF originating dubstep channel. And then it kind of evolved, as it sort of, I guess, has done for a lot of people in my generation that are into music now. But I've always made different genres, or I used to anyway. When I started making music, it would never be one thing. I'd be making music at college, and it would be a dubstep track, or like a kind of house track, or a garage thing, or some weird 100 BPM thing. I make a lot of hip hop as well currently, with MCs and writers, friends of mine. So like that's all, and I'm from hip hop was my first sort of love within music. So I don't know. I've been lucky. I've been surrounded by a lot of great music from a young age. My parents have got an amazing vinyl collection, and just great, like, genuinely a great taste in music. So
Yeah.
I think for me, it's always nice to experiment, but this LP gave me the opportunity to actually do it, because I think before then I was like, should I start a new alias? Um, and then I was like, realistically, I've not got enough time in the day to start something new. I felt like as long as the mood fitted with the drum and bass and the kind of tone, then I'm like, well, that, even though it's a down tempo song, I'll be like, well, it sounds like Revan to me. It doesn't sound like
Yeah.
a different producer. So I think the mastering stuff definitely influences me into like new aspects of those genres, because I'm not super in touch with all of those subgenres that are in the LP, that in their industry. So it definitely helps having someone say, here's loads of new music from this genre, and I'm just like, oh my god, like, this is
Yeah.
insane. And then I get to kind of technically break it apart and add my sort of flavor to it. But there's always to a long form of answering that 100%. I think it's always great having someone send you music from a different avenue,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah,
is a massive
definitely.
influence.
And a different perspective. And I think you're right, really. I think there was like, and we're past it now, where if you did another style, then you had to have another alias for it. But
Yeah,
tempo shouldn't dictate what an artist name
no,
or an artist brand, if you like, I don't really like that word, is about, really. It's about mood, it's about vibe, really. I
yeah,
think probably the best example would be Caliber. You can hear, and when he goes really far out, he'll call it Dominic Martin, but otherwise,
yeah.
whether it's breaks, house, drum and bass, anything, dubstep, like, it's all Caliber, and you can fucking tell straight away
Yeah,
within a minute, really,
but
can't
it's
you?
like you listen to people like Bonobo. It's like prime example of, like,
Oh yeah.
you can do, like, yeah, Bonobo is such a crossover of dance music and ambient music and orchestral and everything, but you see it live, and it is dance music. It's like, it's 4/4,
Oh,
like, it's amazing, but there's no restrictions tempo. Like, people like, like Tom Misch, like other artists that are involved in other genres, like, there's no, it's the artist dictates the tempo. It's not the tempo that dictates the artist. So it is funny,
definitely.
isn't it? Like, in drum and bass or in dance music, a lot of times it's like, oh my god, I'm working with a different tempo. I've got to start something new.
Yeah, I think drum and bass has been a victim of that, and it's not through any fault of its own, but it's the way that drum and bass has been treated in the past.
Mm,
It's like we've been this kind of island, and one of that is part of tempo, but also, like, going right back historically, the media treatment of drum and bass.
yeah,
And that's what attracted a lot of people to it. It certainly attracted me.
the
And,
rebel
that's it.
culture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
completely. And because of that, then it lives within its own confines and its own culture. But then when you break out of that, that's when the worries and the concerns that you might be losing people's alienating listeners and things. But then these are the fears. Then it kind of brings us right back around full circle to the other things that are kind of manipulated or tapped on by the media. Then really, or by
Yeah.
the industry, really, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think like you said, it's kind of, yeah, almost pigeonholed ourselves by, over time. But like you said, it's changing now, and I think it's good.
Yeah.
Some of the best down tempo music I've heard has been by drum and bass producers, and because it's such a technical genre, and you have to explore so many different things. It's not just I'm going to create a vibe here. It's like if you want it to be a credible drum and bass tune, people will pick apart the mix down until the very end. And if the mix down isn't up there, people are like, nah, it's dead. The tune's dead. It's shit. So I think when then they're taken from that much restriction in drum and bass and given almost like complete freedom in a different genre, and you go, this doesn't have to be technically amazing, so just go mad, just make an amazing song. It's almost
Yeah.
like this big release where you're like, oh my god, I can put like a 20-second reverb in here, and I don't need to go mad. I don't need to EQ this that much. I'm just gonna, yeah. It's just, I think it is freeing, and it is. I think it's important to not restrict yourself. Like you said, it's the artist is tempo shouldn't dictate the artist. I think it should be the other way around.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
but not everyone's into. I know some people that only listen to drum and bass. So then it's like that's your thing. Like
Yeah.
I've never been that person, and so I think when the opportunity to make this project came around, and it wasn't intentional, but the way that it fitted in the end, I said to Tom, was almost like a prelude to like this actual big album that I want to sort of make next, which I want it to just be complete chaos, just every genre that I can think of, and still mainly focused around drum and bass, but really kind of dive deep on some of the other genres and arrangement techniques, and utilizing more potentially live music. And
Wow.
I don't know, I just want to have fun with it, just do something different.
Brilliant.
I think the thing with an album is like a lot of drum and bass albums I listen to and I go, well, that's just 3 EPs just put in an album. I'm like, that's cool if you want to do that, but when I listen to if you listen to an album from any other genre, it's like a story, or it will bring you on a journey usually. And for me, I'm like, I don't want to make an album that's just 12 bangers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
You want
want
to
to,
take
or
people on a trip, really. And I'm
yeah.
guessing you were really, you're on that explorative path at the moment, and you were with imaginary work, and you've just picked the very best examples of those explorations, and not, that, yeah. So you've probably got lots of other whips and stuff which took you to these points, and tracks like Grey Areas would have been the result of quite a few other different kind of tracks which you've made and stuff like that, but you've picked the very best examples of those explorations.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some stuff that I've held back purposely because I'm like, I think this would suit a larger project, or there might be there are a few tracks that I was toying with sending Bassy yet, and I was like, okay, I think I need to hold a few of these back because I don't want this first. It's almost like a tease for my audience, or future audience. I didn't want this first thing to be so left field that they're like, fuck this guy, I'm going somewhere else. um so yeah, I don't know, it was a fun project, and I think the realization of the project between me and Tom was where we stopped trying to make this 4-track or 5-track EP that was just loads of bangers, and actually like, let's turn this into more of a conceptual thing and give it a bit more depth for what I do. And for me, it's a nice outlet. The ill truth
Yeah.
stuff for me and Jay have kind of realized stuff the other way around, where early on we were trying to make all of this. We're trying to make everything, basically trying to make liquid jungle, like future jungle stuff, like halftime techie stuff, minimal stuff, like funky stuff. And then after a while, we're like, actually, what we do is club music. We make music for clubs. Like,
Yeah.
let's not beat around the bush. Like, as Ill Truth, like, we are known for club music and we love making club music as a duo. So, like, look, we're not trying to reinvent the fucking wheel here. Like, like, so for me, the Revan thing and the Ill Truth thing is nice because I've got that balance of I can do the club thing and the like heavy techie banger, thing and
Mm.
explore with that realm and kind of give myself parameters to explore as Ill Truth. And then the Revan thing for me now is like just how am I feeling? Do I want to write something deep today? Do I want to write something techie, or like do I just want to go completely off the rails and make some other genres and be happy with doing that as well? Like you said, it's
Brilliant.
taking the pressure off of my own
Yeah.
mental health by needing that external kind of appreciation, I guess, or
Yeah,
external kind of
definitely.
validation, I guess.
Yeah, and I think probably being part of a duo for so long is also really helpful because you've got that person who you trust. In Jay, you've got that person
Yeah.
who you could trust implicitly. You could send him, and you know that he's going to be completely honest with you about everything.
Yeah. Sometimes we're
I,
both way too honest.
but that's really important because otherwise you're not just stuck inside your own head. And even then, when you're doing Revan, is Jay the first person you send stuff to, even when you're doing your solo stuff, or is he a
No,
little bit further down the chain because there's a worry that it might become ill-trutified if he's the first person you send it to for feedback?
no, I don't send any Revan stuff to Jay for feedback. None of it.
Oh
And he
wow!
doesn't send me myth stuff either.
Right,
But
go on.
we've got this unspoken kind of dialogue. It's almost like telekinesis thing with music where if I'm writing something and I'm thinking, right, I'm going to write a Revan tune today. And then after an hour, I'm like, actually, this is more of an Ill Truth sort of sounding thing. I'm not going to try and force it. I'll just go along with it and be like, well, this was meant to be Revan, but this is Ill Truth now. So then I'll send it
Right.
to Jay and I'll be like, look, I started writing this, but I think this is more of an Ill Truth vibe. And he'll say yeah or no. And vice versa with the myth stuff. He might say, oh, I started this idea as myth and completely got like turned around and now it's definitely an Ill Truth thing. So it's good.
That's
We're
cool.
honest with each other. It's not just, I like there's been times where maybe I've been like, yeah, I've got this Revan tune, and Jay's like, man, this ain't a Revan tune. Like early doors of me starting my solo project, and where I haven't quite figured out my style yet. So yeah, I don't send him any music. It's quite weird. Like as
Wow.
Revan, I just don't, I kind of like to just have it completely separate, and then he might hear it at like I don't know a gig or when it comes out, and then might be like, oh mate, like I don't know. We've got a shared Google Drive, so every now and then he does go. Oh yeah, I had a skim through your Revan folder on the Google Drive, and he's like that tune's sick, and I'm like, oh, you listen through that? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I'll have a skim through every now and then because I
Wow,
didn't send
cool.
him
Do you do
anything.
the same stuff with myth tracks
No,
then as well?
only because he writes loads of music, and I'm just like sat down, just like, yeah, I'm not. I'll know the good stuff when I'll like hear him play it to like, I don't know, we've had a couple of drinks or something. He's like, check this new one. And I'll be like, all right.
Yeah.
So I'll let him sort of decide the good ones that he wants to show me. Or he might slip one in an Ill Truth set, and I'm like, what the fuck's that? He's like, oh, it's a
Uh,
new one. So
oh, cool, cool. But you are collaborating with people on this release, and I think that's the final part in the puzzle, really, as we start to wrap
mm,
up. Let's big up your collaborators, really, starting with Fox, because he will
yeah.
always be one of my favorite ever voices across any genre that he touches. Fox is just
Oh
a
man.
man, isn't he?
Yeah, he's the guy. Like that the track in the call, that was gonna be on my first EP. So
What? It goes
that
back that far?
yeah, the instrumental goes back before I put out the first EP, and I think we were sat on the first EP for 6 or 7 months before we released it. So that was the first track essentially for this because we were waiting on the vocal from Fox. So we were like, okay, let's not rush this. Let's like give it its time. That was the addition that track needed. When me and Bassi were chatting about it, I was saying like, I was like, it needs a vocal. And he was like, who do you want? And I was like, I can only hear Fox on this.
Yeah.
Like only there, I was like, there's no one else I can hear on this tune. And we were toying about other ideas because Fox was really busy finishing up his album at the time that I asked him to get on board. So he was like, it's going to take me a little while because I'm doing the album and stuff. So I was like, all right. And Tom was like, we were just chatting about it honestly, and was like, is there anyone else that you might want to get on board? And I was just like, it has to be Fox. Like, it just has to be Fox. So we waited, and yeah, he really delivered, man. So yeah, big up
Brilliant.
Fox.
And then from one MC to another, then MC Focus.
Yeah, and that's a similar story with that track. That's also like old. Like I think just before the lockdown,
Wow.
I sent him the instrumental for that. And it changed various times, the instrumental, and kind of I was toying with the arrangement, but yeah, Phil is just a machine, man. He's like the imagery with that really, and again, it's called The Illustrator, and then the title's called Imaginary Work, and for me, it was like, oh yeah, this works perfectly. It's like this, yeah, for especially for probably the only dark, I guess, like heavier tune on the
It's the
uh
clubbiest track, isn't it? It's definitely the
yeah.
clubbiest one.
But he's great, man. I love Phil. Like Phil's just outside of his talent as an MC, he's just a fucking great guy. Like got
Very
no
positive source of energy as well.
yeah,
Very
man.
inspiring
Like
person with everything else that he does with his coaching and things like that.
yeah, he's always just been that guy that's for every time I speak to him, whether it's in person, whether it's just passing for 30 seconds, it's always like a really pleasant experience. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you leave someone and you go, fucking hell, I'm so glad I saw that person, man. Like
Yeah.
Phil is that guy where you just like you leave and you're like, fuck yeah, I'm so glad that I said hi to Phil for like 5 seconds. Yeah, he's a great guy, man, and amazing MC. So big up Phil, and yeah, we were speaking recently about working on some more stuff. So I'm hoping that
Cool.
we can do some more stuff, probably for one of his projects, or one of the XBT projects he's done with Medic. But yeah, love that guy.
Brilliant. And then of course Objective as well.
Yeah,
He's
and
just
that
been
was
killing it, really. Kind
he's
of in a
such a
similar way, he's been
workhorse.
unavoidable, like Ill Truth were when I last interviewed you. So a
Yeah,
couple of years ago, when he won Dub Wars and stuff, it was just like fucking Ill Truth
yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, yeah.
Objective is he's in that kind of zone at the
And
moment.
Felix is just. I met up with him just before Christmas, and I can't remember what he said, but he was like talking about tunes he's released this year, and he said he'd released something ridiculous. Like I don't want to quote him on it, but it was something stupid. Like he released like 40 tunes this year or something. I was just like,
That seems quite
what?
believable, man. That's nuts.
I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, just he was like, I don't know what it is, man. He's like, just fucking just keep making all these, just keep making tunes, and then I'll just sign them like straight away. And I'm like, fucking hell, man. Just like you're on a different, you're eating some different spinach. Like I don't know what you're eating, but fucking hell. Yeah, he's great, man. And that tune was that was a lockdown collab. So it was just when you were allowed to like, I think just when you're allowed to have like your it was like four friends or something over to your house and had to be like all confined and everything. And yeah, Felix came over. We just had loads of fun basically. The whole tune was just a complete blag. He came in with this piano sample and we just had some fun. Like we always just joke about and mess around. There's loads of outtakes of us putting like Little John samples throughout the tune and stuff like that as a joke, but it just worked. Like just yeah, just a really really organic process. It just kind of sort of wrote itself. I couldn't tell you how we made it. It was one of those we just sat down and then 4 hours later we were like, oh, we got a tune.
Oh,
So
those are the ones. That's the kind of creative, the flow that you're looking for, really, isn't it? That you
yeah,
always hope for and don't quite often. You can't. You could never force that, can you?
no, 100%. And there's good things and bad things with that because you come up with amazing music, but then when you try and recreate that thing. You're like, I wish I could like bottle up that thing that we had going at the time and like, make all your music like that. But yeah, Felix is great, man. Funny guy, amazing producer, but also open to trying new things. I think that's such an important thing with people that I like to work with. It's not just, oh, I'm going to try this, and then the other person go, oh no, don't do that, or like, why are you doing that? I like working with people that kind of a bit more open about trying something different, or with the techniques they have, working in a slightly different way to the normal.
Yeah. Well, that's what collaboration's got to be, really, in that type
Yeah,
of
I
way,
think
isn't
so.
it? Being open to each other, share ideas, and see where it takes you.
I think so. I think it's an important facet of working with someone, really. It's like
Yeah,
just
I
being
think
able to
so.
take my sound, your sound, and let's like mesh some weird shit
Mm.
between us and come up with something different. So
Definitely. So I think that's a really good tip to kind of sign up on, is being open to ideas, really. And let's end with
yeah.
some knowledge. Let's end with some Revan knowledge, really, because we've talked about sharing the knowledge. Let's reel up this fake industry with some proper know-how. So what would you love to have been told 10 years ago when you first started coming through? What's the, is there a kind of a priceless piece of information or empowering anecdote or anything like that which springs to mind, and completely like I've sprung this on you, so you haven't been able to prepare
That's
this
all
or
right.
think
It's
about it.
fine. I
What would you
think
love to pass on?
I think in terms of creating, I would when I was sort of just getting into it, I would have loved to, I guess, like enjoy the process a bit more. Kind of like what I said earlier. It's always like it always felt like a struggle, but actually like learning stuff is the best part about starting anything new. That feeling when you learn something like this small, and the rush of learning something and be like, oh my God, this is amazing, and you see the result is good, but then it's always right, what's next? What's next? And
Yeah,
I'm a culprit for that even now. I think everyone is, but definitely enjoy the process and bask in the like, I guess, reward a bit more.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but in,
It's not about the destination, it is about the trip, and you only realize that after a few years, really. But I said this
yeah,
on a radio show the other day. Yeah, enjoy the process and embrace every bit of that, really, and don't be in a hurry to get
yeah,
to where you think you need to be, because when you end up there, you won't want to be there. You want to be somewhere else
exactly.
anyway.
I think as well, kind of on a similar point to what we were just talking about, is like be open to stuff. Don't just say, well, I want to be this producer or I want to be this sound, so I'm not going to do this because it's different. Like you might think that you're this one producer or this one sound when you start out, and that's where you want to be. But until you try other stuff, you might actually be the worst producer that you can be by confining yourself in this one little box. If you branch out and try something new, in 5 years' time, you might be, oh, actually, I'm so glad that I did that, because I've developed as an artist from this point into this completely different realm, but I'm enjoying it way more. And the music I'm making is more rewarding, and like just be open to new stuff. You can't, just because you want to be the next DLR doesn't mean that you should only make songs like DLR. You know, DLR will probably tell you that himself. Don't make music like me.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
he's done,
You can only
he
be
does.
you. DLR can only be DLR. Revan can
Yeah,
only be Revan. You
exactly.
can only be you, can't you?
Exactly. And I think from an industry standpoint, for what people, if someone was able to, if I was able to go back and someone was able to give me this pool of knowledge, I think as an industry standpoint, just I'd almost take things with a bit more of a pinch of salt when opportunities come around. So don't just jump opportunities, especially if contracts are involved. Like be open, don't be afraid to ask people for advice, people that are higher up than you in the scene, people that have been doing this for a longer time. If being honest, they're the people that will want to help you because they've probably gone through this some bad spells in their career. And that's helped me and Jay. Like I can even tell you how much that's helped us, is being
Yeah,
able to ask people for advice. even if you've only met them once at a gig and they've given you your email for, sending them tunes, don't be afraid to ping them an email. They'll probably appreciate you asking a question that isn't, or sending them an email that isn't just check out my new tune. So
yeah,
ask
absolutely
for
right.
advice. Don't be afraid to ask. Well, like you'll be surprised who is more than happy to spend 20 minutes of their day helping you out. I fucking know I am.
Yeah,
When someone asks
definitely.
me stuff, it's like, yeah, please, like, don't ever feel, same with Jay, like all of us guys in our network. And this is what me and James Amos were chatting about before, is like, you should never turn down the opportunity to help someone, because without that, we would be nowhere. And that's it. We're going to sign
Definitely.
off like that.
Definitely.
Bang.
No, I love that. Because I was thinking on the flip side of that is don't be miffed if you don't get a reply straight away. Because
Oh,
sometimes
yeah,
I'll
yeah, yeah.
take 2 weeks to reply. And I'll
100%.
come back with advice and stuff, or maybe even a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while. Don't be like, kind of worried if you don't get a response straight away. It's just because that person it's never like the one piece of advice that I always give people is like, if you're reaching out and asking for some type of promo or some type of support in any way, then don't be surprised if you don't get a reply for a month or two because we're all
Yeah.
really busy and stuff like that. So I think, always
And
reach
be
out to people,
persistent
but
as
never
well.
worry. Yeah. If you don't get a response one time, try again because
Yeah.
you might just caught somebody when they're on tour or when they're just,
I have
when
it.
they're in an album process or under a deadline or anything like that.
Exactly. I have it with people that send me feedback. If I meet them in person and they go, "Can I have your email?" I'll say to them, if I don't respond, just hound me. Like, send as many fucking emails as you can. Like, I don't care. I'd rather go, "Oh shit, I forgot to respond to that guy," but you email me 10 times, and like, one, I'll read it. Two, that tells me that you're hungry. You're not just sort of sitting back. It's like you want to, like, you've got the drive to be like, I don't give a shit if I'm going to piss this person off. Like, I'm gonna get drain every ounce of knowledge out of this person that I possibly can to better myself. For me,
Yeah,
that's what me and Jay started out doing. We were just badgering people all day. So I think, yeah, being persistent and, maybe not annoying, but it's a
there's a
fine line.
fine line.
I think, yeah,
No, I
just
think that's
just
brilliant.
just showing drive is so important. Showing that you actually want to be here and you actually want to, I it's not all about confidence, but you can be a shy person but still have drive. So I think it's
Definitely,
definitely important.
definitely. So, where's your drive going next? Then I know this is horrible because you literally just released probably one of the most personal and accomplished releases that you've done so far in your career. But where will we hear Revan or Ill Truth next? What's the next release to come from yourself? And then
So Revan, um, I've got a 2-track single coming on Sofa Sound in March. And that's featuring MC Blue Jay on one track, and Skeptics on another track. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Been sort of sitting on these tunes again. I'm a culprit. I sit on music for years before I release it, just purposefully. So I've got friends like, "This one's finally coming out," and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And I'm like, "All right, sweet." They're like, "Yeah, I stopped playing that ages ago because you sent this to me like 2 years ago." I'm like, "All right." So there's that. I've got an EP for Subtitles, as Revan, coming probably just after halfway through the year, I think. But that's been wrapped up for a year or two. Um, and then after that, I'm just sketching for the album stuff. Me and Creatures are doing a collab EP at the minute, which again is kind of going back to more Revan club music. After this project, I said to Bassi, I want to make a couple of bangers again, and then go back to being expressive and deep. uh, and then, ill truth wise, we've got an Australia New Zealand tour that's happening in 2 weeks.
oh wow,
Um,
sick.
so that'll be fun going over with the overview guys. So that'll be fun. Um, we've got our label, Truth Hurts, which is penciled in for the first release in March. That's just a 4-track EP from ourselves.
Brilliant.
Following that, we've got an overview EP. and a Sofa Sound EP, as well as a couple of cool remixes that we can't announce the remixes yet because it's kind of like under wraps, but a couple of cool remixes.
Brilliant. Loads going on. Loads of imaginary work going
Yeah,
on
yeah.
in this oh
Yeah,
so
literally.
fake industry.
Exactly.
Amazing, man. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Hayden. I feel I've learned a lot as well. And I know we've got loads of knowledge to pass on to anybody who's watching this and stuff. And I look forward to hearing more stuff that's coming up. So thank you very much for your time
Mate,
and
thank
joining
you.
us on One More Thing.
Honestly,
And,
thank you so much, man. It's been a pleasure.
yeah, totally, man. Totally. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's watched all the way to the end as well. That's amazing. You're amazing. So please like this or subscribe or share it with your nan or anything like that. It would be really, really handy. Cool. Thank you very much, Hayden. Thank you very much,
No
everybody.
worries.
Wicked.
Safe,
Cheers.
man. Big ups. Bye.
One more thing.
One more thing. One more thing.